So the Steam Winter Sale came and went, and that means that I finally managed to pick up some games that I've been looking at. Most notably Total Warhammer 2, as well as 1, and I've been playing them for the past couple weeks. I may or may not have put hundreds of hours into them already, who knows? But I also went and picked up Rise of the Tomb Raider, which is the sequel to the 2013 Tomb Raider reboot, and not to be confused with the most recent Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which I haven't played yet. Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be talking about the Tomb Raider 2013 game, the sequel Rise of the Tomb Raider, as well as the book that they released in accompaniment to the rebooted 2013 game, as well as the movie that they released in 2018. So essentially, most things reboot related. I know there's a comic they released, which happens directly after the 2013 game, but before the book, but I don't read comics, so I have no comment on that. So let's talk about gameplay first before we get into the big crux of the video. And I'm a big fan of them. I never managed to get around to playing any of the Uncharted, and I figured that this is essentially Uncharted but with Lara Croft. I really like the big set-piece events that they have where everything's exploding around you and you have to run for your life and jump and use all your equipment to scale cliffs and walls and escape for your life. It's a lot of fun. Shooting leaves something to be desired. It's not the greatest. I mean, the arenas that you're in are generally small, and the way the AI works is once you've been spotted, they'll just throw grenades at you non-stop while they swarm you. So pretty much you just end up pulling out your shotgun or your assault rifle and you just spam like crazy and hope that you kill them before they smack you a bunch. You can't really do a lot of the back and forth, pop out from behind cover, aim and fire with your bow. It just doesn't really end up working once you're actually in direct conflict with them. And I wish that they'd be able to fix that, but it's probably not one of their biggest priorities. And I'm fine with that. Again, it's serviceable, it's fine. But where the game really shines with its gunplay and mostly the bow and arrow is with the stealth mechanics. And the way that it works is that essentially you can come upon a group of enemies and they have no idea you're there. So you can move around in bushes and shoot them with your bow and instantly kill them or do silent takedowns on them. But then once you're spotted, then it's over. You pretty much can't do anything and they will just come at you and you're forced to do direct gunplay. I really wish they did something like with the Arkham Knight games or, Arkham City, Arkham Asylum, where when you're in those arenas, if you're spotted, you could go back and hide again and then they'll still be alerted, but you're allowed to go back into doing more silent takedowns. You're not forced to just fight them straight on. And they don't do that, and that's kind of sad. But overall, it's fine. When it comes to moving around the game world, it's honestly pretty fun. It's relatively fluid, it's really well done. I don't think I really had any major issues with it personally, though there are some annoying bits where you just end up jumping the wrong way, a la Assassin's Creed, and fall to your death. And there's nothing hugely wrong with it, but they do give you the item from the first game in Rise of the Tomb Raider where you can pretty much go back up zip lines really quickly. And you think that it's going to be great. You're like, oh great, I can backtrack now, it's all going to be hunky-dory, but it's not, because the vast majority of the zip lines that you can zip down are set up in such a way that you cannot jump up from the bottom to then climb back up them. So why do I even have that to begin with? You can't backtrack up these ways that you want to, and it makes navigating the world later on really annoying. So I'm going to comment on what I really enjoy with it, and just like, in the first game and in the sequel, the tombs are amazing. I love having those puzzles there. And I'm not the first person to say it, but I wish that they'd integrated puzzles more into the actual storyline plot rather than having it as side content. I wonder if they were worried if the puzzles are too hard for people, then they'll get annoyed and they won't be able to solve it and they'll stop playing our game. And I don't think that's the case. Though even for me personally, I had some trouble with some of the tomb puzzles. I remember there was one where you have to deal some stuff with the mine carts. And the problem that I encountered is that you're supposed to go right up next to a minecart area, and behind a gate there's a spot for you to shoot your bow to then pull a minecart towards you. But the problem is that if you go to anywhere near that's further out from it, it will not light up with your Tomb Raider vision, which shows you where you need to act on stuff. So when you click it, Lara says, oh, maybe I can move a minecart. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, I know where the minecart is. I know there's a gate there, but there's no rope on the gate. I thought I'd have to shoot the gate and then pull the gate to make it come down. Even though later on there's one where you have to get some fuel barrels and you shoot a rope onto the gate of where the fuel barrels are, pull it, and a fuel barrel comes down. But no, what it is the rope is actually attached to the minecart behind the gate, and it's really hard to see it, and it doesn't light up. So I had to go onto YouTube and be like, great, now I feel like an idiot who can't solve a simple puzzle. Hooray for me. But it's not a huge deal, and I wish that they integrated more puzzles into the plot itself There are a couple. There's one where you have to pretty much navigate this weird astronomy tower thing, and you have to climb around and jump, and I didn't mind that. There's also one with a trebuchet, and I think those are the only two in the main plot, and honestly, they really should have done more. Like, instead of your main plot pieces being, oh, now I have to climb this tower, I wish it was like, oh, you climb this tower, but then you have to solve a giant puzzle to get something. Like, there's a part where you have to get an atlas, which gives you the map to find out where the MacGuffin is, but you pretty much just walk up and take it once you've climbed the tower, and I wish that there were more puzzles to solve stuff to then get those. The only other major problem that I really encountered with glitches and whatnot and just not as much polish, and it didn't really affect anything too badly, was just I got a lot of T-pose issues, where I had some NPCs stuck in T-pose, not a big deal. I had some enemies stuck in T-pose, again, not a big deal because they didn't shoot me, so I just shot them in the face and they died. And then in one of the final big endgame moments, I can't remember if I said this earlier, but I'm spoiling everything that I know about this, so if you don't like spoilers, I'm sorry, too bad. But they're supposed to have all these zombie enemies climbing walls and towers around you, and they were all stuck in T-pose for me, so they were just in T-pose on the wall floating, and then you had these huge trebuchet shots coming in and exploding everything around them, and they just disappeared, and I was like, great, so there's a huge T-pose army just blowing up around me, hooray. The only big glitch that I encountered was an invisible enemy glitch with the trebuchets, where I got up to the trebuchet, and every time I tried to use it, an invisible archer would shoot me in the back, so I had to run all the way back to the gate, have him reshoot at me, and then when I ran all the way back across the city to get there, they were then there, and I could kill them, and then I could use the trebuchets properly. And I mean, as games, they are fun to play. They're really fun to play, though I don't like the level design. Even later on, once you beat the game, you're allowed to go back in to get any more collectibles and everything like that, and so what you essentially want to do is you go back to the start of an area, and then you want to run through it while trying to collect all these collectibles. The problem is that while you've progressed through the plot, some of these areas end up getting permanently blocked off, so you can't go back through them. So what you instead need to do is you need to start at, say, Camp A, which is at the start, run forward, get those collectibles, hit the brick wall, which would then, in normal playthrough, bring you to Campsite B, so you have to then backtrack all the way back to Campsite A, to then teleport to Campsite B, and then do that again. And it's just really annoying. I wish that they had at least opened up pathways back through it, so that you weren't constantly just going forward and then backtracking to then teleport out. It's just an annoyance. But the biggest thing for me, and that's the biggest flaw to these games that I've encountered, and it's gotten worse over time, is just Lara as a character and the writing in general. Now, I didn't have any major issues with Lara in the first game. I mean, there was, of course, all the stupidity of, oh no, I pretty much fell and got a huge piece of rebar stuck through my side, and now I'm gonna die, and oh no, my wound opened up, so I'm gonna just burn it shut with a heated arrow. And that starts again right from the get-go in the second game, where, oh no, I pretty much fell off a cliff and smashed my head into a rock, and thank God I have my pistol here with infinite ammo, but I'm super wounded and falling down all the time. But I'm willing to give that a pass. The big problem that arose is just how they end up treating Lara as a character from the first one. Like, I really liked Lara in the first game. I remember the one moment where, even though she's, a strong character, she's not, I do everything myself, I don't need anybody else, I need to go off on my own. There's that one part in the 2013 reboot game, I'm just going to call it the first game from now on, the first game where she has to go across a bridge. And one of the people that she knows, is friends with, I can't remember if it's Grimm or the other guy, ends up being a sniper for her, and he says, okay, while you go and climb across this broken down bridge, which is being patrolled by enemies, I'll shoot them and keep you covered. And she's like, yeah, this is a really smart idea, this is great, we should all do this, why don't we do this all the time, because I'm not an idiot, and I realize that asking for help in order to accomplish goals is not a fault. Unfortunately there, it breaks into the book. Now, the book was written by Nick Vincent and Dan Abnett, and they're actually a husband and wife, I guess, according to Wikipedia. So, and if you'll know, Dan Abnett writes a bunch of Warhammer 40k stuff. Good writer. The book's not very good. Honestly, there were a couple plot issues that I had issues with, but I can't really go into them because it's been years and I forgot most of them and I don't really want to reread the book. But there is one moment that really stuck with me. So after the events of the game, Lara has PTSD, which I guess makes sense. I mean, she only killed, an entire island full of people. And her friend that she'd saved from Himiko is now, in a coma, and she has to go try to save him. Or, sorry, her. Good job, Sam. But anyway, what ends up happening is that she ends up meeting up with one of her father's old friends, and they have lunch together, and she's not doing well. And he's coming in here, and he's like, "Oh, if you need help, you can always come and talk to me. Just come talk to me." And goes to put his hand on hers, and she visibly recoils. And there's this one line in the book, and it really irks me, and it's something along the lines of, "Oh, but he remained a true gentleman and kept his space." Oh, sorry for your strong character. It's so bad that this guy wants to, give you some human affection. Not actual, affection, but, just some human closeness. Hey, you're not alone. He's, some old guy, so it's not, some sexual thing. But, yeah, he's just trying to be hey, I'm here for you if you need help. If you need to talk to somebody, you can always talk to me. And she's like, "No, I have to do this all on my own." And the entire book involves people being "Hey, want me to try to help you with this?" And she's like, "No, I need to do it all my own." Until randomly she encounters this one girl who goes to university, and she's like, "Hey, can I hide among you while I try to escape evil dudes?" And they're like, "Sure." And then at the end of the book, she goes and has a slumber party with her, so good on her. But anyway, you're not being a strong character, you're being an idiot. You have all these people saying, "Hey, can I help you?" And she's like, "No, I'm a strong character, I can do this all by myself." And I'm like, "No, you're an idiot who's over her head, and you're gonna get yourself killed because you're stupid." Though, to be fair, one of the people who's like, "Hey, I'll help you," ends up being part of Trinity, so I guess she's right in that fact, so good on her, I guess. Anyway, so it starts off with the second game with her climbing a mountain with Jonah, who has become black for some reason. Now, people say it's the lighting engine that they ended up using for the game, and my argument is, well, if the lighting engine is making this guy who's Maori black, maybe you should go in and lighten his skin tone until he's Maori again. But no, they don't. So anyway, Jonah's now black. And it's like, "Oh man, Lara, we're gonna get through this together and I'll help you." And she's like, "No, I have to do this on my own. Go back, Jonah. I just got through an avalanche. I got thrown through a brick wall of ice, but I'm gonna do it on my own. I don't need you, Jonah." And Jonah's gone. Until he randomly comes back halfway, or 3/4 of the way through the game, and he's irrelevant and pointless. But anyways, just the way she's written is really bad, and it's unfortunate. Now, the thing that people said about how the writing was done for this game is that they chose the set pieces and where they wanted scenes to take place, and then they brought in the writers afterwards to say, "Okay, now I need you to connect the dots and make a plot out of this," which is a really dumb way to make your game. I mean, the great thing about these games that I enjoy personally is that it's kind of like an Indiana Jones movie where, "Oh man, there's some potentially mystical thing out there and we're going to go try to find it and search through these ruins to get to them." In the first game, I really liked, the Japanese lore and the Oni and, all the zombies that you end up facing against in Himiko. That was really great. And in this one, they're trying to build up, the Prophet and his immortal army, and it is just terrible. They don't talk about a lot of stuff. I mean, it's not the biggest issue, but in this one, it's a lot more annoying than the first one. For example, it's okay, so this source is essentially the Ark of the Covenant, where if you look at it, it'll pretty much keep you alive forever, but it will steal your soul and turn you into a weird zombie thing. Our immortal army became weird zombies who just do the same thing over and over. And except, now, and so they're kind of mindless and will only protect the city. But then at the same time, your main antagonist, Anna, is like, "Oh man, this will totally keep me alive and everything will be hunky-dory." And it's like, well, no, that's not how that works. And then she ends up looking into it anyway, and nothing really happens, but it's immediately destroyed afterwards, so whatever, I guess it doesn't matter. More importantly is you end up finding the Prophet is surprise Jacob, which I called from the beginning because it's a really predictable plot. But anyway, Jacob for some reason had the source for 1,000 years and was using it to keep himself alive, but he didn't become weirdly zombie-like. I don't know why he's special. He even goes out of his way early in the game to say that the source isn't divine. So while he used divinity to preach to his people, the source was just something there that kept him alive, but turned everyone else zombie-ish, I guess. But yeah, the freaking divine source. Why is it a shiny rock? How does it work? Where was it found? How did Jacob find it? How does he use it? How does it make him immortal? They don't explain any of this, and it's really dumb. But it's even worse because the whole game, Lara's like, "I need to find this for my dad." And when she first meets Jacob, Jacob's like, "Can I dissuade you from request?" She's like, "No, I need to bring this to the world. The world deserves to have this. If we could make people immortal, it would cure all disease and cure all death, and science would advance so far." And then even right before, the big climax happens and she goes to try to climb to get the divine source, she's like, I still need to get this for myself and bring it to the world, and you guys who have been defending it for like 1,000 years cannot hold this any longer, and she's adamant to just bring it to the world. And then literally the second she gets to the top and Anna's holding on to it, she's like, Anna, we can't use this. Humans need to die, and it's not our place to grant people immortality. And, put it down. This isn't worth it. And pretty much you're like, okay, this is a huge character development for you. This came out of left field. Literally nowhere did you have, some revelation saying, oh man, maybe, we shouldn't bring this to the world. Maybe, we shouldn't bring this to light. It should stay hidden or be destroyed. Comes out of nowhere, and it's baffling. I don't know how they came up with this. They're like, okay, we need somehow to make Lara go onto Jacob's side. How can we have this happen? Oh, I know. Have her suddenly out of nowhere say, oh man, Jacob was right this whole time. And this whole time when I told him he was wrong, man, I was wrong, but I'm not going to admit that I was wrong. Instead, I'm just going to change my point of view and act like it was my point the whole time, and that no one should have it. No one deserves this divine source, and it's so stupid. So I really wish that they actually explained what was going on with the main crux of the story. The other big problem is that this game is real hard on Lara's dad. And the thing is, I don't give two craps about Lara's dad. You don't see him in the game, like you'd never interact with him as a person because he's already dead. It's all these stupid flashbacks of him being like, oh, I want to discover this and I need to find the truth. And then Lara as a kid going, but I hate you, Father. Why aren't you paying attention to me? Why aren't you leaving this alone? I need a dad. I don't need an explorer. And now it's her as an adult being like, oh, Father, I miss you so much. This was so important to you. Why did you have to die? I'm going to do this for you. And literally every time I stop at a campsite, I'm going to either be playing a recording of my father, or I'm going to talk about how much I love my father and how much I'm doing this for my father. And I love you, Father. And it's like, shut up about your freaking father. Like, Jesus, we get it. And it starts right at the beginning. The second she climbs over the stupid mountain pass and all this crap, she's like, we made it, Dad. And it's just non-stop going on and on about your freaking dad. And it's just not interesting. Like, I don't care. Your dad's dead. And you can immediately state right at the beginning, you're like, oh man, your dad, who was a lord and pretty much this great explorer, committed suicide? Man, I don't buy that. Trinity probably killed him. And then surprise, at the very end, your big reveal is, hey, Trinity killed him. And it's like, this isn't a reveal, this is just boring, and I hate you. This whole game harping on about your freaking father and he's dead. Like, good job. And it's just this problem where, even at the very end, like, just same thing with Jonah. Like, yeah, he was a fine character in the first one, didn't really do anything important. But, I didn't mind having him around and interacting with Lara in some way. But then in this game, suddenly he's this super best friend, maybe love interest guy, who, with no training, is climbing mountains with her, and living in the wilderness and tracking, patrol routes and all of this and making comments about, oh man, Lara, like, I'm here to help you, and then he does nothing. Like, he literally does nothing, and he's just useless the whole time, and I'm like, I hate you, Jonah, why are you even in this game? There's nothing for him to do, and honestly, he's just kind of there to be pointless, and it's just really annoying at that point. There's nothing wrong with having characters in these games, but at least, the dialogue isn't good. And the problem is that your main plot isn't fleshed out enough to cover this. There's huge discrepancies within the game itself where it just needs, some oversight. They have murals throughout where you can find and learn about things, though I guess they couldn't bother to write, 30 more lines of dialogue when it came to the Russian ones. You get some really interesting, slogans and whatnot at the start, and then at the end it's literally Lara just going, more Soviet propaganda. More Soviet propaganda. Okay, great, but what does it say? I'm actually interested in this, I really liked finding all the artifacts in the first one and then, having her insight in them. Wish she had a little bit more of that in this game too, but I'm not, what I got wasn't the worst. But then you go to the ancient city and you get a mural here and she's like, oh, this is a mural about where they brought, the dead and dying from when they collapsed the glacier onto the city. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, we know that when they collapsed the glacier onto the city, the pretty much immortal army was already zombified, and they've been spending their entire time pretty much wandering the ruins, killing any survivors. Who is sitting here going, oh man, you know what? I was just in the city collapse, and I'm pretty much dying of starvation, and everybody's wounded. I'm gonna go carve this mural while this immortal army's killing everybody, just to explain what's happening right now, but here's where we're bringing wounded. Like, no, it's just freaking stupid. No artist is going to sit there. They're going to be going, oh man, I need some food. I need to get out of this freaking collapsed city where everybody's dying. And while none of this is really make or break, it just ended up being that I enjoyed the first game more, because in that one I was pretty much actually solving a mystery, and there was tension, and oh man, who are these mystical beings that are coming around and killing everybody, and what's going on with that? And it was more fleshed out, whereas in this one it was just, oh, I put in a minimal amount of effort, and I'm just going to harp on about my dad, and I'm not going to answer all these big questions about, the divine source, which just ended up being a letdown. I'll still end up playing the third one eventually. I'm pretty sure Rihanna Pratchett isn't the writer for that one. I'll be honest, I'm kind of glad, because this second one, the writing is just, it's just bad. Just plain bad, and there's no good way to say it. That's just how it ended up, and it's unfortunate. Because at the end of the day, the gameplay is really good. Like, I really like the way it's set up and you move around the world, as I already said. But I'm here to be Indiana Jones, and Indiana Jones is here to find the artifact, find the history behind the artifact, and then use it to stop the bad guys. Where in this one, it's just kind of there while Lara does crap with her dad. Now, I did say quickly I'd mention about the movie, and the movie's fine. It's very generic. But the interesting thing about the movie is that while it does pretty much copy the plot from the first game, it actually subverts it. It doesn't really hold up in all that way because of it, but I did like the fact that, rather than it actually being mystical powers that, Himiko was using, it was instead that she was a carrier for a virus, and she was the only one who wasn't infected, but it was super infectious and would kill everyone. Interesting, but it doesn't save the movie, because why did she need to bring thousands of people to an island and then entomb herself? Why couldn't she just lock herself in her room or in a cave somewhere and then just, burn herself alive? Whatever. I'm not going to argue too much about it. But I will also note that Lara's father had a prominent role in that movie, though I don't know why. And he was better in that movie than he was in the game, because in the game he was literally atrocious. So yeah, if you ever see it on sale for $14 like I did, I would recommend picking it up. It's good for a playthrough at least. But overall, I've enjoyed the first one a lot more than I have this one.
I almost lost him once. Not again.
My favorite part is when you go back into the game after you complete it, you end up back at the Remnant camp, and as you're walking through, they're having all these conversations, and one of them is a guy being like, "Oh man, it sucks that Jacob's dead, but I'm sure he went peacefully. And Lara was with him, so I believe it." And the reality is that Jacob ended up dying with 4 bullet wounds in the chest, and then he turned to dust. So, yeah, super peaceful.